Alrighty, it's Tuesday. That means it's time for a sports Q&A from me, the Schleg Daddy, and got some good questions. Not quite as many questions as I would have hoped, but that's okay because sometimes that means I can delve a little bit more into the questions that I do get. Reminder again, you take to Twitter every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. I do these Q&As about sports-related topics here on the Schleg Daddy TV channel. Want your questions answered, just go to Twitter. Tweet your questions to at pfspot_schlegel. That information should be in the description box while you're watching this video. So let's get started with this Q&A. At Duke THS asks, who between Sammy Watkins, Marquise Goodwin, and Robert Woods do you think is most likely to become a franchise wide receiver for the Bills? I look at Goodwin and I think he's that type of stretch vertical threat that every offense potentially needs. I think as a number 3 option, that's where he's best suited in the NFL. I look at Robert Woods, and he's got to stay healthy. It's a key thing. But he definitely, to me, profiles at the very worst as a legit long-term number 2 wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. I really like Robert Woods. I loved him coming out of USC. Thought he was somewhat underrated as a prospect, and he flashed some nice moments in his rookie season for the Bills as a second-round pick. But I think the guy with the best skill set to potentially become a franchise wide receiver has to be Sammy Watkins. He has that special type of big playability, that special type of explosiveness that you just don't get every day. And he's more than just that. However, he is not a finished product, and I think it's important to remember that this is not a Watkins that had 3 tremendous seasons at Clemson before coming to the NFL. He really had one monster season in 2013 for Clemson. So I won't call him a one-year wonder. I won't go that far, but he's far from a perfect product at this point in time, even though I think he was talked about in a lot of glowing terms to the point where he was viewed as a really finished product coming out of Clemson. And I don't think that was the case. But out of the 3, to answer your question, Duke, I'd say Sammy Watkins. Nick Cool 123 asked, do you think that the Raiders are going to make the playoffs with the additions on defense and offense? Technically, you put addictions, but I'm assuming you mean additions. Maybe with a few more players with addictions. Who knows? The sky's going to be the freaking limit for the Raiders. No, because you have to look at the fact that they play in a tough division in the AFC West. I think their schedule in general is not all that kind to them. And just because they made moves doesn't mean that they got a whole lot better. Now, with that being said, is I do think they will be a little bit better this year. Does that mean they're going to go from 4 wins to 8 or 9? Probably not. It would be very likely, in my opinion, that they maybe win 6 games at their ceiling at the most, but look like a much more improved team. Now, does that mean a lot long term? Not necessarily, but it would be something. We'll see how long Matt Schaub holds on to the starting quarterback job. I'm assuming that he's going to start the season as a quarterback. He might play a good portion of the season as a quarterback because I don't think Derek Carr is ready yet. And even if he has a good preseason, I don't think that he'll be a better option to give the Raiders the best chance to win a game compared to Matt Schaub. Look, Matt Schaub's never been great, but Matt Schaub wasn't terrible in Houston, and I think he got a lot of undue criticism to him in Houston this past season. He had some bad moments, made some bad plays. They lost some games because of him, but they ultimately went 2-14. It wasn't just because of Matt Schaub. At Alex Shirley 10 asks, could Johnny Manziel's NFL career end up like Vince Young's career in a bad way? There's a possibility. I mean, because one of the knocks on Vince Young was maybe a lack of focus, a lack of determination, and a lack, of dedication and maturity. And you could see some of those traits and characteristics in Johnny Manziel. Funny thing is, though, Vince Young, with all the people talking about him being such a big bust over the years, I believe he was a 2-time Pro Bowler, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that's some bust. I could see Manziel potentially going in that direction, but he could also just as easily go in the other direction. That's why, to me, he's such a fascinating prospect and such a fascinating player to watch in the years to come because he could really go in one or two trajectories. I see some elements of Cade McNown in him, but I also see some elements of a Russell Wilson in him, a Steve Young in him, a Fran Tarkenton in him. I see all different types of potential for Johnny Manziel. Mark Lioness Jr. asked, with Derek Fisher going off to coach and Shane Battier being MIA, meaning he retired, who do you think will win Flopper of the Year this year? This is kind of a sad question, but it's sad because it's kind of true. The NBA has gotten very much like soccer in a bad way in the amount of pussification of the sport, the pussification of the game, and everybody flopping and crying like a big bad baby. I would say the flopper of the year would probably be Dwayne Wade. I mean, LeBron knows how to flop. Paul Pierce knows how to flop. But Dwayne Wade is somewhat legendary in his flop ability. So I'll probably go by default, maybe Dwayne Wade at this point in time. Maybe a Lance Stevenson will battle it out, but I'll stick with D Wade Flash for the time being. At underscore Keys 10 asks, is Eli Manning an elite NFL quarterback? No. No. Hell no. By really no statistical measure is Eli Manning in any way, shape, or form an elite quarterback. When you're saying elite, you're talking about maybe the top 10 to 15% of quarterbacks in the National Football League. Well, with 32 starting quarterbacks in the league, you're talking about somewhere between 3 to 5 starters. And again, as I often talk about, there's usually that fantastic four that everybody acknowledges as being the 4 best QBs in the game. In some order, that's Brady, Manning, Breeze, and Rodgers. In some particular order, usually that's a consensus. Those are the 4 elite guys, and everybody else is after them. Who's the number 5 guy? When you talk about Eli Manning, he's got 2 Super Bowl rings, something I know his brother Peyton would love to have. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings, something that an Aaron Rodgers and a Drew Brees would love to have. He's got 2 Super Bowl rings, but again, was he the driving force solely behind those 2 championships? Was he elite in those 2 Super Bowl championship seasons? Oh, God, no, especially the 2007 season. Eli Manning is a good but not particularly great quarterback. Eli Manning is a guy that's had some moments where he stepped up where he needed to, and other times he plays like he's a lost little child, frankly. He's probably more in the 10 to 15 category than in the 5 to 10 category in terms of quarterback rankings in the league. At Omer H82, is there a way to fix the Hall of Fame selection process to prevent log jams at positions and biased picks and snubs? And I know you're talking about the NFL. You were referencing, I think, things like Ray Guy. Ways to fix the Hall of Fame selection process to prevent log jams. I mean, you could do several different things. You could sit there and say, if there's a finalist, it needs to be 1 running back, 1 wide receiver every year to clear up some of that log jam. Maybe you sit there and you say, hey, instead of having 5 modern era and then up to 2 senior committee guys, maybe we expand that to 7 or 9. Because I dispute this notion that adding more people to the Hall of Fame every year would diminish the Hall of Fame in any way, shape, or form, or having the eligibility to have that many guys. If they're Hall of Famers, they're Hall of Famers. It doesn't matter so much whether they get in after 2 years or after 15. I mean, this is my whole thing, is that how much is it really going to hurt if you gave another option or 2? If you said instead of having 5 modern era guys, you have 7. How bad is that really going to be? How much is that really going to diminish the importance and significance of the Pro Football Hall of Fame? I don't think it does at all, and I think to suggest that is frankly pretty ridiculous. In terms of the biased picks and the snubs, I think it's important to maybe start to get some of those old fogies, those old school writers out of the Hall of Fame voting process, because they're so rigid and so regimented in their ways of belief and thinking that I think sometimes they could become hazardous to the Hall of Fame process. Maybe we need a youth movement in the Hall of Fame voting committee. I don't think that would be a bad thing at all. Maybe that's something else that could help. But I guess there's always going to be log jams. There's always going to be a thing of this guy belongs over this guy. Why isn't this guy in, but this guy is in? It's just going to happen. But those might be some changes you could potentially do. I know they were talking about they're adding a contributor category, I believe, so that way it might open up more possibilities, eliminate some log jam in that category, and that's a good thing. Let's see here. At Madden God 45 asks, Phillip Rivers, Nick Foles, or Andy Dalton? Who would you take as your quarterback? Well, I definitely wouldn't take Andy Dalton after the contract he got. And yes, I'll be doing a video about that, I believe, tomorrow. Oh, my God. For one season, like for 2014, I'd take Phillip Rivers. He has the best pedigree. He's had the most NFL success. He's the most accomplished of the three. I think ultimately he's the best of the three. So for one season, I would take Phillip Rivers. If I'm building a team for the long term, I'm going to take Nick Foles. Now, look, I don't want to totally besmirch Andy Dalton and say the guy can't play at all, because he has those flashes and he has those moments where he's able to put together some very nice performances and some very nice games. It's just unfortunately when bad Dalton, dumb Dalton as you might call him, shows up, he could be just about as bad as anybody. I think Foles is a little more consistent. I like Foles' accuracy, his decision making, his ability to protect the football. So long term, I would probably take Nick Foles over both Rivers and Andy Dalton. Thanks to all of you guys that submitted your questions for this Q&A. A reminder that I'm doing team-by-team previews for the 2014 NFL season on this channel. I believe I'm on to the NFC South now, so stay tuned for that. It'll be 2 videos a day. It started August 1st. It'll go through August 16th. Remember, again, to get your questions in on Twitter for these Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday sports Q&As. In the meantime, I will see you later. Thanks, you guys, for watching and sending in your questions. Bye-bye.